Yes, a brief go through or just recap about the concept of data quality in DHIS2. So, you know, in data quality, there are several components. So you can think of, say, maybe 9, 10, 8 components. Yes. So regarding data quality, DHIS2 cannot address all the components of data quality, obviously. So DHIS2 has capability of addressing only some aspects of data quality. So I have mentioned few: correctness, completeness, consistency, and timeliness. So among these, the completeness is very easily can be managed, can be assessed in DHIS2 using completeness. So you all know, I think. And timeliness also very easily can be monitored in DHIS2 platform. So those two are very simple and straightforward. So we are not going to discuss on those two today. Right. The rest of the two, the correctness and consistency, is the focus today. So correctness is how correct your data, how close your data to the reality. So in DHIS2, actually Neha discussed, the logical validation rules are there to check the correctness. The other thing is the consistency. Consistency is how consistent your data over time and among similar type of institutions. So that is consistency, how consistent your data over time or among similar type of institutions or health facilities. So that consistency, again, we can check with validation rules. So correctness, both correctness and consistency, we can assess or check with validation rules. So this is a repeated slide. So you can you saw this in Neha's presentation. So this is an example for a validation rule. Validation rule has three main parts: left side, right side, and operator. I am not going to go into detail because Neha explained this. So this is an example of validation rule. So you have left side some value, right side some value, and you get the operator which compare those two values. So that is the rationale, that is the concept behind validation rules. Okay. In DHIS2, so always validation rule should be true. If your data are inconsistent with validation rule, it will trigger a error. So validation rule always should be true. If your data is not matched with validation rule, then you will get an error. Right. So in DHIS2 validation, so I am just summarizing what Neha told. So validation rules in DHIS2 are of two types, mainly of two types. The first type is logical validation rules. So we use these logical validation rules to check mainly the correctness. So in the logical validation rules, what we are doing is we are just comparing two or more values. Why I am telling two or more values is on the left side of the validation rule, instead of this one value, that is malaria cases treated in the example, you may get a uh, composite value which consists of several data elements. That is possible. On right side also, you may get more than 2 data elements. So by logical rules, you are just comparing raw data. So in data element, you are just capturing raw data. So in logical data validation rules, you are comparing those raw data using logical validation rules. So that is it. The second type is validation rules using a threshold. Here, in one side, maybe left or maybe right, it doesn't matter. In one side, you get a data element or data elements, while on the other side, you get a created value. That is not a native raw data. That is not a data collected by a data element, but that is a data you have generated for some purpose, a generated value. So that you are comparing your actual raw data with a generated value. For an example, so just look at this example. So okay, in this example, rotavirus 2 administered, number of rotavirus 2 doses administered is compared with rotavirus threshold for that month. The rotavirus threshold is not a value we are collecting through data entry interface, but a value which is generated using those values, using values entered to the system. So this is the difference. So by using these validation rules using a threshold, you are usually checking consistency of data, usually over time. So that is the two types of validation rules we are using in DHIS2, right? So, okay, right. So now the problem is, now you know, if you have these data elements, you know how to compare those and make validation rules. So that is simple. The problem arises when you need to compare your value with a generated value. The question is how to generate this threshold value. How to generate this threshold value. Example, rotavirus threshold for that month. So how to calculate this threshold? So that is the problem, right? You have two options actually. One option is, so there are enough statistical tools, third-party tools, maybe R, maybe Stata, maybe SPSS. So you can use those tools to generate your value. So to generate your value with those tools, what you have to do is actually, first you have to export your data to that specific software. So that means you have to take your data out from DHIS2. Then you do calculations there and you generate your values. And second step is, or the rather third step is, you have to import those calculated data back into DHIS2. So 3 steps: exporting necessary raw data, calculating necessary predictors or say threshold values. That's the second step. And the third step is importing them back into DHIS2. So this looks very simple to mention or present, but as you are familiar with DHIS2 platform, you know this is not that simple in the practical scenario. So this is complicated. This is complicated. So for that, DHIS2 has provided a special functionality called predictors. Predictors. So DHIS2 has now the capability to predict or calculate the required value for you in DHIS2 itself. So that means you don't need to export data, you don't need to use a third-party software, and you don't need to import data back. So everything you can do, the prediction part or calculation part also you can perform in DHIS2 platform. So it's a big advantage, and with these predictors you can do lot of things. So the predictors can be used to generate these outliers, and it definitely make your life easy as DHIS2 implementers. So I think up to now it is clear, right? So how to generate predictors is out of scope of this academy. So we are talking about predictors in more detailed manner in our data quality level 2 academies. So this is being an analytics academy. We are not going into deep details of predictors. But I will just mention how predictor works. A predictor, of course, is another data element. A predictor is a data element. So one no, we will take it like this. So there's a special data element to take the predicted value or calculated value. That specific data element does not take data from outside usually. So that does not take data from the data entry interfaces or data sets. So that data element is there. There's a special formula called predictor. The predictor consists of obviously a formula. By this formula, predictor generate or calculate some value and populate that value to that specific data element. That's it. And then you have a data element with that predicted or calculated value. And as you are using those raw data for your in your validation rules, you can use that predicted value, the data element contained in that calculated value in your validation rules. That's simple as that. So predictors are data element values that are automatically generated from samples of current and past data, depending on the period you have specified to be included in the calculation. For reviewing immunization data, quality predictors can be used to analyze previous data in order to generate reasonable outliers for future data. Yeah. So the link I have given, so managing predictors or generating values with predictors is a bit lengthy topic. So I have given the link. So after this session, when you're having a leisure time, you can go to this link. So this refers a DHIS to actually the DHIS to documentation, and there you can read a lot about predictors. So we are not going to go into deeper details of predictors now, right? So what predictor contain is obviously is contain a formula. A predictor contains a formula to calculate something. So say if you want to predict or calculate the margin for outlier. So usually you know your basic statistics, it's the upper margin would be plus 3SD, 3 standard deviation. So to generate the upper limit, so you can use the formula, the average of values plus 3-fold of the standard deviation. Or on the other hand, to calculate the lower limit, you can subtract 3 standard deviation from the average. So what I want to say is for a predictor will contain a formula, and a predictor will contain a period. So you have to specify a period for a predictor. When you are calculating the outlier boundary with a predictor, usually we are taking not 12 months but 11 months that precede last month. Usually we omit last month. So without the last month, I will explain this later. So we are taking the last 11 months instead of 12 months. And we may have exclusion criteria in predictor. So if among those 11 months data, if there is an extreme outlier, if we consider that, that will affect our predicted value badly. So we are excluding that sort of extreme outliers even among those 11 values we are considering. So in this slide, what we want to understand is in a predictor, we have three parts: formula, a period, and exclusion criteria. So this slide shows it diagrammatically. So if you want to calculate the predicted value for December, so just imagine you want to calculate predicted value for the month of December 2018 here. So I think you can see here. So to calculate predicted value for the outlier value, the outlier boundary for December 2018, you are considering, sorry, here actually, so this is wrong. So this cross should come here. So we are excluding the previous month, immediate previous month, and we are including all the other the previous 11 months. That is the norm of calculating the predictor. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like to 11 months. Excluding, so here, up to here, sorry, up to here. So excluding the previous month. So according to this example, the average is, can you calculate 122.8? The standard deviation is 16.4. Then outlier, according to our previous calculation. So this is the average plus 3 folds of standard deviation. So outlier comes as nearly 173. So what does it mean is, now if you have anything more than 173 for December 2018, so that is a possible outlier. So this means if you get 190 or 200 for December 2018, so this could be a outlier. So still it could the statistically outlier does not mean the data is wrong, but you may have some reason for that, but statistically it shows as outlier. So you can you can draw your attention to that number and correct it if it is wrong. So that is the rationale behind calculating predictors, right? So going further, right here, just look at these data. Now we have a set of data. So these are on the right side, right column. In this column, you get predicted values. You get predicted values using that predictor and that calculation formula. So on the left hand side, left column, though actually the middle column, you get the actual values you have been recorded in your system. So predicted, so just go for the last one, Tiger Hospital Gateway PHC. So I am just referring the last row. So here, and predictor value is 444. So the recorded number is 402. The predicted value means the predicted outlier boundary. So this is the boundary. Something below this is all right. So 102 being less than 444. So the number is all right. So it is within the range of our predicted range. So the first row, predicted threshold is 700. So that is the upper limit, statistically predicted upper limit threshold. So we have recorded 6,757, which is most probably a typo. So this is the identified by the system as a outlier. Definitely it's much bigger, though higher than our predicted threshold. So this is very simple and easy to understand. Right. So so once we have generated the outliers, we need to check our data to ensure that the data values do not exceed the outliers that we have generated. So we have discussed that, and so that check actually, so once you have generated your predictors, even you can check them manually. No harm, you can generate a say pivot table, so that they can, like I have shown in this slide. So you can have a pivot table with predicted value, and manually you can point them. So, or else you can automate this procedure. Checking the procedure you can automate via validation rules. That's what we were talking about. That's what that is the thing. That is the procedure. That is the process we are referring to. Right. So the manual procedure is all usually it is very difficult because if you have a lot of values, and if you are hoping to calculate it for different time periods, organization units or unit groups, so manual procedure will be very difficult one. So that the easiest way is to automate the procedure through validation rule. Okay. Once you create a validation rule in the system, so by now you know validation rules are of two types: logical validation rules and validation rules that are checking for threshold. Logical validation rule will check for correctness of data, while threshold validation rules will check for data consistency. Now you can understand. Whatever the validation rule, you can run in the system in two places. You can make the validation rule to run at the data entry. So in data entry form itself, when you are entering values, so once when you know there's a button on the bottom of the data set to run validation, or else when you are completing your data set, if your data is violating validation rule, you are not allowed to complete your data. So that obviously can be stopped. So that there's option not to run in forms when you are creating validation rules. Okay, we will see it when we are doing the demonstration. So that is the first stage we are running validation rule. Second place where we can run validation rule is within the data quality app. In the data quality app, you get a link for validation rule analysis. In validation rule analysis, you can run your validation rule modifying your dimensions. That is, you can change your org unit dimensions. You can come up in the hierarchy, and you can change your period dimension. You can change. You can even validate yearly, monthly, likewise quarterly. Right. So that is about validation rule outlier analysis. Right. Okay. Let me.
Sorry for interrupting, Priyanka. We have some questions out here in the chat. If you could address them.
Yeah. Pramod, can you please attend to the chat? It seems we have some questions in the chat.
I think that is in regards to the thing that you were just explaining.
Ah,
So
is that so?
I think
Okay.
Gayan is asking, would it mean that every time they're calculating a predictor value, then it will be according to the previous 11 months every time?
Yeah. That depends. That depends on how you define your predictors calculation formula. The standard deviation is taken by this previous 11 months, actually not previous 11 months, excluding the previous month, the month 11 month before those, before that last month. So that you decide when you're creating your predictor. Right. Okay, let me move to the demonstration. So do you need a break before the demonstration? So anybody, do you need a short break before the demonstration? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. Okay. How many minutes? Yeah, okay, okay. Right, fine. Okay. 5 minutes break. 5 minutes break. So our so this is actually the first half of the second part. We have to do some few more slides regarding validation rule notification. This will be a brief demonstration. So okay, we'll stop for 5 minutes and we will be resuming exactly in 5 minutes. It's 10 minutes past 12 in Sri Lanka time. Exactly after 5 minutes, we'll be resuming. Okay, okay. Thank you very much. Next part of our presentation, right? Okay, right. That is validation notifications. Validation notifications. So you can run validation rules manually. That means, so I told you, you can run validation rules while you are entering data in your data set and in data quality app. So that is a manual process. So if you run your validation rule, then if you run your validation rule, you can see your output. Okay. So even validation rules can run automatically. You can set validation rules to run automatically via scheduling. So when you run validation rule, actually a group of validation rules, if there are validation rule violations, you can generate a message and send to the users. You can generate a message and send to the users. So what that message, that message is called validation notification. That message which are sending to a predefined user once a validation rule is failed is called validation notification. A validation notification will consist mainly three parts: the validation rule or rules which triggers the notification, that means the violated validation rules, and the recipient and the customized message. customized message. Okay, right. So this I mentioned earlier. So these notifications, so validation rule notifications are generated when you run validation in data quality app. It is not getting generated while you are running validation in your data entry interface. While you are running validation rules in your data quality app, the notification will be generated. So that is the manual process. Or you can automate the process of running validation rules by creating a schedule, creating a scheduler task in schedule app. You know that scheduler app. Okay. So now you know validation notification is generated, and now you have to send it to the specific set of users. So that can be done in 3 ways. So you can send that validation notification through internal messaging system in DHIS2, inbuilt internal messaging as a DHIS2 internal message. That is the first thing. And if you have configured email and SMS, you can send them as email and SMS. But mind you, you have to configure email server and the email and SMS configuration first. That is the first requirement. And the second requirement is, sorry, the second requirement is in the specific users. So you are supposing to, you are trying to send those notifications to some users. In those user accounts, they should have entered their email, correct email address and SMS number, telephone number for sending SMS. So those two are prerequisites, right? And in DHIS2, those we discussed, you can include a customized message within this validation notification. You can include customized message within this validation notification. So in that customized message, you can include organization unit where the validation run and the period for which validation was generated, validation was ran, and description, rule name, priority, etc. You can customize the message to include these parameters. So ideally, the notification will allow users to identify and respond to challenges with data quality quickly. So that is the intended use of validation rule notification. So if some data validation violation has occurred, so you can automate sending notification to some set of users. But you have to be very careful when you are setting up these validation notifications. Because if your data set is, now if you have uh, uh, created lot of low priority validation rules where you can have frequent validation rule violations. So your validation rule notification may filled with thousands of validation rule notifications. So which is the undoable task for any of users to go through all the validation notifications. So what will happen? So the user will user may neglect this. So this is too much, so I can't do it. So you have to be very careful when you are selecting, when you are generating validation notifications. So make them so send only for very important users. Select your users carefully and select only very important validation rules. Select the validation groups carefully. So it is very important. So just because these features are available in DHIS2, if you implement this, it will do some sort of more harm rather than more productive thing to the system. So that is about validation rule notifications. So the presentation is over. So now I am going to show you a few things about validation rules. Okay, right. Shall we go to the, I'll change sharing. Right. I think now you can see my instance. Okay. So the same instance, analytics you are using. I am selecting data quality app here. So in the data quality app, you have this validation rule analysis option. So this is the second place where you can run the validation rule. So I demonstrated the first place, that is the data set. This is the second place. Okay. So here they are asking some parameters. I will, so org unit, I will select animal region. So they are asking for days. I will select 2019 January 1st. Okay, fine. From January 1st to February. Okay, somewhere around the, okay, third, fine. Okay. And then validation rule group. So mind you, here you cannot select validation rules separately. To select here, you have to group your validation rules. So it's very simple, like you are grouping your data elements, you are grouping your org units, anything else. So you are just creating a validation rule group and including the necessary validation rules in your group. Then you have to select that specific group, So shall we select this immunization threshold? Fine. Okay. Now you can run validation, but prior to that, so I want to send notifications. I will click this send notification option. Send notification option. So before that, let me duplicate my and go to messages. I have few messages. I will delete all the messages. Okay, now I don't have any messages in my message box. Right. Now I am going to run my validation. Validate. Okay. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 validation errors. And so this is the validation report. In this each validation report, so very difficult to read here. For that you have to explore the detail. Under the detail, everything, all the details are there. So what is the name of the validation rule, description, and what are the data elements on left side and right side there, likewise, and values also. Okay, right. Now here you can see I have got 5 messages. Earlier it was 0 because I made it 0. Now I have got 5 messages. Okay, sorry, it's 3. Okay, so okay, so these are the 5 validation errors we encountered. So how others? So somebody else have also run. Okay, I am getting more and more. Okay, you may also doing this validation because I am a part validation rule notification receivers user group. I am getting a validation messages every time you are running your validation. Okay, that is the message. Let me open my email. Okay, here. So this is the amount I have received for last, say, 1 hour, last 1 hour. So, this is the this is why I mentioned when you are uh, setting validation notification, you have to be very careful. If someone's mail is flooded with this much of mail, no one will take time to open each and every email and check them. So you have to be very careful when you are deciding on validation notification. So this is the message body, right? Okay. So that is about validation notification. So we checked the mail message app and we checked the email, and then, right, I will just show how, if you are not receiving those validation notifications, it's your, maybe you have not updated your account with your email. Here, user profile, you have to put your correct email address and phone number if you want to get the SMS. And also in account, sorry, user settings, you have to select enable message email notification to yes. If you want to receive SMS, enable message SMS notification to yes. So anyway, you will be getting system message. Anyway, you will be getting the system message. So I think, Pramod, now that is the part I have to cover. So Neha demonstrated how to create a validation rule, and so so somebody so do you have any question now? I think you can put in the chat or in Slack. Pramod will help me to extract those questions. So if you have any concern or question, you can now, our chat is open, Zoom chat, for your questions. So please come up with your question. Even you can mute yourself, unmute yourself and ask your question, or you
Sorry,
can raise.
Priyanka.
Yes, yes, please
Can you
proceed.
can you show us how we can set up the validation rule notifications?
Okay, how to set up notifications. Okay, fine. Right. Okay. Right. Okay. So we are going to create a validation notification. Okay. Validation notification, as all settings in DHIS2, is located in maintenance app. So this is the maintenance app. You have validation section. Here you have validation rule and validation rule groups. So this is where you group your validation rules. Very easy. You create your group and just add your validation rules to that group. And this is the link for validation notification. Validation notification. Okay. I already have created one. I will demonstrate using it to save time. So here you first you have to give a name. Give a name. So make sure you are giving a meaningful name, and you can give a code if you need, and then you have to select validation rules to trigger this validation notification. Mind you, here you are just selecting individual validation rules, not validation rule groups. So validation rule groups are used when you are generating, so when you are doing validation analysis, or when you are running validation in data quality app. Here you are selecting individual validation rules. Okay, fine. Right. Then it's not a good idea to have a large number of validation rules. Okay. Then recipient user groups. Recipient user groups. So I think you know how to create user groups. Again, very simple. Just show you in your user management section. You have to have admin privileges to do this, super user privilege. So you can add users. So there are a lot of users in the system, and as in any other group, you can you can create user groups likewise and give a name and add use members to that user group. It's very simple. Okay, right? So among those user groups, you can select to which user group you are sending your validation notification. You select user group, right? That's fine. And you can send validation notification as single notification. So if there are 10 validation rule violations in 10 institutions or 10 health facilities, you will get 10 messages or 10 emails, even the worse, even the worse. So collective summary will send one email with all the violation of 10 validation rules. Okay. So notify users in hierarchy only. So that means if we are running this validation rule for specific, say, region, the users assigned for that region will only receive the notification. Okay. So that is notify users in hierarchy only. So always, in most of the time at least, better to select that option, because the users out of that hierarchy generally does not need to receive the notification. So this is the message template. You can mention a subject template here, right? And so here you are creating a message while you are writing your message. So you are just typing the number of rotavirus 2 doses, then you are using a variable. So this variable is the left side value. So the list of variables available to create or include in your message is available here. Role name, role description, operator, likewise. So this is left side value. So this is a variable should be less than or equal to rotavirus 2 threshold. On right side, again variable in. So again variable log unit name during. So this is the period, again variable. Please follow up on this value. So this is the message, and you can save this. So this is the validation notification. So when you run, when this validation rule is triggered, then automatically notification will generate if you click that send notification option when you are running your validation. It's simple as that. So is it okay? So is it clear?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, welcome. You are most welcome. Okay. Yeah, you have. It's all right. Okay. Okay. Fine. If you have any other question, you can ask. Right. Okay. We have a question in Slack. Yeah. For the validation rules, if I would like to check if users are entering cesarean sections in health units, or specific organization unit group or health center, residential should not exceed 20. Right. It is like this. Now, if you are mentioning a constant in your validation rule, it should not be more than 20. It should be at the data entry level, most probably a facility. If your if you are entering data at a district level or higher level, so you can implement it that specific level, but it should be data entering level if you are using a constant. So same validation rule, so we can check if you whether you can run for a group of institutions, say at district level, rather than 20 you can make it 100 or something, the constant, and run again, you can get the result. So this is so this type of validation rules which contain constants in left or right side are not usually advisable to run in data quality app, so that they can be used to limit the range of data entry in your data set. So I think I answered that question.
May I have one question?
Yes, Deepa, please.
Um, Suppose that we use that data quality app for the analysis.
Yes.
It's just for the maintenance purpose or find out any other abnormalities.
Yes.
While doing, if we arrange that automated email setting and notification,
Yes.
it will reach us to others. So is there any way to stop for the period of sending those notifications while we are analyzing the things within the app?
Yeah, just so how automatically the users are getting notification is through scheduling. So you can stop, so you can temporarily disable scheduling. So let
Okay.
me show you. You can wait. Okay. Right. Here. Yeah. Under the schedule, you can go to the schedule and you can temporarily, rather than deleting your schedule, you can temporarily disable your schedule here. Then your notification will not send to the users until you enable it again.
Thank you, Dr.
Right. I think. Okay, you're welcome. Right. Next task today is to have our graded assignment, which is very important in your final marking. So before going into that little stressful event, I think Pramod will manage that. Let me take, so I hope more of you are now tired, participating nearly 3 hours in our academy in a sort of a little complicated topic. So let me take you to a tour, actually a virtual tour, to one of the most important tourist destination in Sri Lanka. So which is where we can go today. Pramod, what do you prefer? Somewhere in
Historic location.
some historic location. Okay. Okay, let me give me a second then to select a historical. Okay. So how about Anuradhapura then?
Yeah, that would be fine. So if you can just give a brief introduction as to like what is Anuradhapura and what is so specific and special about Anuradhapura that we should be seeing.
Okay, right, fine. Here, guys. We are visiting Anuradhapura. So Anuradhapura is the first established capital kingdom, and the capital of the kingdom actually in ancient Sri Lanka. So this is considered as golden around 400 BC, actually in 377 BC.
So what are we seeing now? So I guess Priyanka, these places are more than years old.
So this is Jethavanarama Stupa. The
Well, Priyanka, is
okay,
this
this is Jethavanarama. And the height is around 122. Actually, this is not a pyramid. This is a stupa.
So what is the stupa? So stupa is an ancient religious monument. So this is again a construction where they have stored some highly prestigious religious items, some Buddhist religious items. They put it inside this structure, and around those items they construct it. So it's a Buddhist religious monument, as we would call it. Isn't that so, Priyanka?
Yeah, obvious.
That's exactly.
But I guess there is one of these stupas which is second in height to one of these. I mean, only one of the pyramids in Egypt. So that I think is the second monument when it comes to height in the entire ancient world. One of these pyramids in Anuradhapura.
Moving to Moonstone Anuradhapura. So I think Pramod has a lot of things to tell.
So I become the narrator, right? So this moonstone is also another monument. What you can see here is the construction, the item that you see just at the base of the staircase. So this is a significant thing that you see in, I think, almost all the constructions, the major buildings in this kingdom. All these buildings had this particular structure at the entrance, the base of the staircase. So what is so important about this structure is that it is totally carved out of the rock, and you see some nice layers, including layers of different animals uh, and some flowers, some greenery, which in fact highlight what was prevalent during that ancient era in Sri Lanka. So now this moonstone itself is more than 2000 years old. It is preserved up to this point of time, I believe, because it is just carved out of rock.
This is one of the palace, ruins of a palace actually. Another big stupa, Jetavanaramaya.
This iconic Buddha statue that you are seeing here is called Samadhi statue. and I think you may see this most of the magazines about historic tourism in Sri Lanka.
We are going a little fast, Pramod, as time doesn't permit.
So whatever the monuments that you are seeing in this virtual tour today in Anuradhapura is somewhere between 1500 to 2500 years old, right? Priyanka?
Yes, Pramod. Yes, this is well-known Ruan Valley Saya.
So this stupa is considered to be the most holiest place for entire Buddhist world, I assume, because this monument that you are seeing here, this stupa you call it, contains the most number of remnants of Lord Buddha's body, as Buddhists believe.
Ancient tree.
Yeah, so what you're seeing here now is called Sri Mahabodhya. So this is an ancient tree. In fact, a branch of one of the ancient Bo trees, which was used by the Lord Buddha in attaining enlightenment about 2550 years ago in India. So this tree that you are seeing in Anuradhapura in Sri Lanka is one of the branches of that ancient tree that you are seeing in India. And they believe even this tree, the tree itself has few branches located close to each other. One of these branches is believed to be the one that was rooted in Sri Lanka around 2000 years ago. So this itself, because of all the legendary information that is associated with it, is considered to be one of the ancient trees in the entire world.
So thank you very much for joining with us in this virtual tour. So because we have very limited time, I think we have to conclude our trip now. So promising to take you to some other destination on next day. So we are stopping our tour. Thank you for joining us with our virtual tour to Anuradhapura, Sri Lanka.